Hello and welcome to Jolene Knits a Lot. This is my show about knitting and other crafts I get up to. Thank you for joining me today. How are you? It is the end of November 2021. It is beginning to look a lot like Christmas. We have quite a bit of snow here. Now we had a fairly decent snowfall in the last couple weeks. So everything is white and snowy. Our little corgi puppy Blue is loving the snow. The cold doesn't, I say cold, it hasn't been that cold, but he doesn't seem to mind the cold too much. We do have a cute little jacket for him. It's fun to accessorize your pets. But he likes to be outside in the snow and playing in it, so that's good. And I guess snow means the beginning of skiing season here in Edmonton and certainly in the mountains close to where we live. So the Rocky Mountains, Jasper and Banff. We tend to like to ski in Jasper. I think only because that's where we started skiing and we've never really skied anywhere else in the mountains. We may venture a little bit further this year, but we haven't really booked anything yet. So yes, it's Christmas. I've definitely started Christmas crafting, as you will see in today's episode. I've started my Christmas shopping, and this week I have big plans to start my Christmas baking. I will be making my Christmas butter tart squares. I believe I included a link to this recipe in a previous episode. So if I did, I'm going to link in the show notes below which episode that was. If you're interested in making some butter tart squares yourself, they're really good. In fact, I may be making more than one batch. And they freeze really well. So if that's something that you need to know, there you go. So Christmas crafting, Christmas shopping, Christmas baking is all happening here. I haven't started Christmas decorating yet, but that may be coming in the next week or two as well. How are you doing? Are you feeling festive? Are you in a festive mood? Happy Thanksgiving to anyone watching from the United States. You're celebrating Thanksgiving this past week. So although I don't celebrate American Thanksgiving, I do think it's a great time to, or a little reminder to maybe think about those things that I'm thankful for. I am thankful for a lot of things. I'm thankful for my family. I am thankful for my crafting, and I'm thankful for you. So thanks for joining me today. I have quite a few things to talk to you about today. I'm going to start with a little recap of the Edmonton Fiber Frolic, which happened on November 13th of this year. I did do a little recap video. It's quite short, so I won't include any footage this year, but I did, I guess, want to share with you my haul from that event. There were a number of hand dyers. There were one or two potters. There was a Kiviot producer. So if you've ever heard of Kiviot, it is the warmest fiber and incredibly soft. It comes from the underdown of a muskox. And it is primarily from northern Canada. So you'll see Kiviot producers from, I think, Alaska, definitely the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. So it's a very sort of homegrown business, I would say. So there's Curio producers. There was a beautiful artist who made landscape pictures out of felt, like needle felting. That was really cool. And she was working while the festival was going on, so you could actually see her creating these things. There was some hand spinners. There were some vendors of things like stitch markers and other accessories. So it was a really nice little market. And then there was some Prosecco at the end. So it was really a lovely day out. And I heard from other people who went that they really enjoyed it too. I'll just give you a quick recap of what I brought home. First, I should just quickly tell you what I'm wearing. I'm wearing my night shift shawl. This is a pattern by Andrea Mowry. I knit mine out of leftovers of Dyed in the Wool by Spin Cycle. And it is an incredibly versatile and cozy piece. So the Night Shift Shawl by Andrea Mowry. So I stopped in at a couple of my favorite dyers. The first person that I stopped in at though was a dyer that I don't believe I have purchased from before, and that was Sea Turtle Fiber Arts. They had this really, really cute zebra sock, and I have seen this base from other hand dyers, and I really wanted to try it. So this, you can see in various parts of the skein, there is white marled with like a darker black and sometimes gray stripe. And then this colorway called Freckle Juice is speckled with all sorts of fun neons and stuff. So I think I'll be casting these on maybe in the new year, just as a fun sock. I just wanted to see how it would turn out. So that is from Sea Turtle Fiber Arts. And then I stopped by a dyer that I have visited before, and that's Lily & Pine. Lily & Pine dye out of Calgary. I picked up 3 skeins from her. The first 2 I've already used, and you're going to see a finished object from these yarns later in the episode. But I picked up a skein of her Daylily sock, which is an 80% superwash merino and 20% nylon. This is the Rose Petals colorway. And then I picked up some of her Dandelion lace in the Rose Petals colorway as well. This is a Surya Pakis silk blend. And I held these 2 together to create a really lovely gift that you're going to see later in the program. So those 2 have already been used, or at least part of them have been used. And I picked up another skein of the Dandelion lace. This is what it looks like in the skein. And this is called Sunshine and Lollipops. I don't have any firm plans for this yet, but I have a feeling it may become part of a Polka Polka hat by Moon and Turtle. I'll pop a picture right here. I think this would be a great liner for a hat, and then a different color for the outside. And then finally, I made a quick purchase at Ginger Snap. Now, if you may recall that a couple of weeks ago, I finished some fluorite socks in her Frenzy colorway. The dyeing is just amazing, and I really enjoyed those socks. But I thought I would try out her new base, which is the Gretel Dk Sock. Sorry, this is her Squishy DK Sock in the Gretel colorway. It comes with this great, really vibrant pink color, which I think I'll be using for some heels, on a plain pair of DK socks. I don't think I've ever knit DK socks, I'll be honest with you. The first pair of socks I knit were worsted weight. They were some hiking socks, and I wore them to death. I even darned them. But I've never knit DK socks. And because these have 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon, I think they would be nice cozy house socks, or maybe socks for colder walks in the winter. So I am definitely going to be giving this a try also once I have completed all my gift knitting, and that could be a while. But look for this to jump on my needles when I have a chance. If you have knit DK socks, can you let me know in the comments below? Let me know if you have a favorite DK sock, either recipe or pattern. I would love to know, because as I said, I've never really knit DK socks, and I think that these would be really great. Oh, I just love it. Okay, and then also from Ginger Snap, I picked up a bottle of her sort of house blend wool wash. This is called Cocoa Snap. It has a coconut and lime scent, and I'm looking forward to using this too. I've been saving it. But this she makes herself, and she has a couple of different flavors. So I'm looking forward to giving this a try, because I use a fair amount of wool wash. I don't know about you, but I hand wash most of the things that I knit. Almost all the things that I knit. There's very few things that I machine wash. The only things I can think of off the top of my head are my outline tanks, which I knit in a cotton linen blend, which are great in the washing machine. But even hand knit socks, I do tend to hand wash them in the sink, which just means I throw them in the sink with some water and some wool wash. I let them sit there until I remember that I did that. Sometimes that's almost an entire day. And then I come back, squish them out, hang them up to dry. And then that's how I wash my hand knit socks. This has been an incredibly informative episode already. So that is my haul from the Edmonton Fiber Frolic. I'm delighted to be supporting some local dyers, and I'm also really looking forward to casting on some of those new sock bases primarily. Apparently I was on a sock kick. And that brings you up to date with my knitting purchases. I have been knitting gifts. A lot of gifts. So let's get right into Jolene Gifts a Lot. Last episode, I was working on a couple of gifts, and I thought I would just show you where I was at with some of those finished objects. So I completed this cross-stitch project. It's not perfect. I made mistakes. I'm owning it. I chose my own colors, so the colors are not exactly as the kit recommends, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. I love the yellows and the pinks, because when I get to that point in the project, in each quadrant, adding the yellow and the pink really makes it come alive. This is a pattern by Junebug and Darlin. You can buy the PDF online, and you can buy kits at Junebug and Darlin or at local vendors. I know the Fiber Nerd in Edmonton carries Junebug and Darlin kits. They may or may not have this one in stock, but all of her kits are really lovely and very cute. I have I've cross-stitched, this is the third one now, and I've loved it. So that's that. I did put some felt on the back of it. I'm just gonna flash it at you because I did a terrible job. However, I figure that would be hanging on a wall, no one's gonna see it, right? I did a bad job, and I know what I did wrong. Instead of cutting the outline for the felt to be the size of the inside of the outer ring, I did the inside of the inner ring. So let that be a lesson to you. If you are a cross stitcher and you are putting some felt on the back, outline the bigger ring for your felt. Happy to help. So that's gift number 1. I also finished these cute little boxes socks. This is my second pair of little boxes socks. And I'm really happy with the colorways that I chose. Also, in other happy news, my older daughter was also very happy with the colorways that I chose. And she was sort of hinting that if they showed up in her Christmas stocking, she wouldn't be offended. So yay, because these were actually intended for her. Don't you love when that turns out? Okay, so that's gift number 2, the little boxes socks, a pattern by Summer Lee. I knit in Exmoor sock yarn. I purchased mine at the Fiber Nook in Edmonton, but I know there's lots and lots of vendors of this really great sock yarn. After blocking, it's really soft and my knitting evened out nicely. So I would say if you're doing color work socks or really any color work, blocking is the way to go because it really evens out your work. I did use some sock blockers to complete the blocking of these socks. And for small things like socks, I think that a blocker is helpful in evening out the tension of your knitting. But if you don't have them, just patting them out and laying them flat will work nicely too. So gift number 2. Gift number 3, I can't show you. I did some test knitting. And I'm going to talk a little bit about test knitting in after this segment. But I test knit something, and the pattern will be coming out in December. So I'm going to show it to you when I can. Gift number 3. Gift number 4 was a porty hat. I may have been talking to you about this in the last episode. I just realized I didn't weave in the end and the inside. It's terrible. This hat pattern is by Isolde Teague. It's essentially a 1x1 ribbed hat with you start at the top. Look at that. I feel like that top is quite nice. You do a bunch of increases, you knit and knit and knit and knit and knit. And then when you feel like it's long enough, you just fold it up and you've got a hat. I used some Eden yarn by River City Knits. River City is another amazing local yarn shop for me. This yarn has cashmere in it, as well as some merino and some nylon. So it's a really cozy, this is the ash colorway. It's a very soft hat. I feel like it'll be a very warm hat. This is a worsted weight yarn, and I knit this hat on 4.5mm needles. The pattern is written for any gauge of yarn or any weight of yarn, and it recommends to use a needle size that you would use for that yarn or for the yarn that you have chosen. I started out with some 5mm needles and I wasn't liking the way it was looking. My increases just looked sloppy and kind of loose. So I switched down a needle size and I was much happier with my finished project. It's a very, very millennial looking hat, but I think the recipient will be very happy with it. It looks kind of pointy on the top, but that's only because of the ribbing. The ribbing sucks everything in. So I think if you put this on a head, it wouldn't look quite so pointy. That was gift number 4. Gift number 5 that I have completed was knit with that beautiful lily and pine yarn that I was showing you, the part balls. I made these mittens for my mama. These mittens, the pattern is the simplest mitten in the world by Tin Can Knits. It has a generous cuff, which I could fold up. And I used a fingering weight and a Surya Packet Silk held double. And I used the instructions for the DK pattern. And it worked like a charm. These are so stinking soft. And I think that they'll be ridiculously warm while being really lightweight. So I'm really, really happy with how this project turned out. And happily enough, I have enough yarn left over to make another pair if I so choose. And I think I might. Again, that'll probably be knitting for after gift knitting season is over. But I'm really, really happy with how this pattern turned out. I know that I have enough yarn left over because I have a kitchen scale at home that I use to weigh my yarn. So by weight, I used less than half of each skein. So pretty. That's the Lily and Pine. I used her Daylily sock yarn and her Dandelion lace, which is Surya Alpaca silk. And both of these in the Rose Petals colorway. So happy with that. And that is all of the gift knitting I have completed, but I have one more project on the needles that I'm going to show you right now. I don't know if you remember, but my husband and I were playing around with making a 3D printed sock machine. That machine is acting up a little bit, I'll be honest with you. It's not perfect. It doesn't work as well as I think a metal machine would work. But it's been a really fun experiment in learning about how sock machines work. I have plans to get him to print out a different version of this sock machine to see if it'll work better. Since we have all of the supplies, all he has to do is print out a couple pieces. It's not a priority, but it's something I think I'd like to try in the new year. Anyway, I did have some tubes cranked, just lying around as you do. And so I'm knitting up the last of the 76 stitch tubes that I had lying around. This is 76 stitches on my circular sock machine. The gauge is about 8 stitches per inch, so a really nice dense gauge. The yarn that I'm using is Felici, and I have no idea what color it is because the band is long gone. But I am using some Sheepy's Metropolis in the Warsaw colorway for some toes. I'll do that again for a afterthought heel, which I haven't done yet. And I peeled back the yarn to do the ribbing at the top in the colorway that was at the end. So I do have kind of a tiny ball of it. And I'm just doing some ribbing at the top. And then I'll probably do some sort of, probably a Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy bind off, which I seem to be liking for toe-up socks. I'm not really a toe-up sock kind of knitter, but I have been knitting more toe-up socks lately. And when you knit a tube into a sock, you kind of have to knit from both ends. It's like burning the candle at both ends, but you're knitting. And you have to knit in the middle, so, you know, you have to be a little inventive about your techniques, or at least comfortable with using different techniques. But I'm happy that this pair of socks will happen really quickly because I have the tube all cranked. All I have to do is knit couple toes, couple heels, couple cuffs, and that will be a gift of socks for my dad. My dad is incredibly knit worthy because often when I see him in the winter, but sometimes in the summer too. He's wearing socks that I knit him, like, I don't even remember knitting those socks, and he's wearing them. And I knit him a vest, I knit him a sweater. He wears everything that I knit him. So he's very, very knit worthy. Socks for Papa. And that is all my gift knitting that I have to share with you. Do you gift a lot? I hope so. I think that gifts that you've handmade are just incredibly precious. So I'm hoping that the people that I am knitting for are appreciating these things. I do have one more project on the needles. It's not a gift, it's completely selfish knitting. And it's the kind of spur of the moment knitting that I like to throw into my crafty life. Andrea Mowry, in the spring and fall, usually has a sort of knitting challenge. In the spring, it's often hats, and this year I knit a couple of Flicker and Flame hats. That was fun. I did a worsted one and a fingering weight one, and those were knit over the course of a long weekend, I think. In the fall, her challenge is to knit a pair of socks over the American Thanksgiving weekend. And of course, I was like, sign me up. Let's do it. The pattern that she is challenging us with this year is the Curio sock pattern. It's just come out. It was intended to be used for hand spun yarns. I'm not a spinner. But one of the sock yarns that she recommended is dyed in the wool spin cycle, which I understand knits up a lot like a hand spun yarn. I went with a couple of stash yarns that I had lying around. They're both by Rostazaria. Is that right? Rostazaria. Sounds good. The yarn is called Mondim, and it is from Portugal. It's a very hard wearing, 100% sock yarn. So no nylon in this sock yarn. And I can attest to the fact that they're hard wearing because I made my daughter a pair of socks out of this yarn, different colorway, but this yarn, and she's notoriously hard on her socks. And boy, those socks have worn incredibly well. So I cast on Monday at 3 p.m. my time, which is 5 p.m. Central, whatever. Whenever the cast on was, I started like right then. And as of Thursday evening, I'm filming this on a Friday, I have completed one full sock. So I'm using a cream color of the Mondim, and then this crazy color. They do 1 row stripes, and there's this pretty slip stitch detail. I did an afterthought heel. I did a bunch of ribbing at the top. I was a little hesitant because I wasn't sure if I'd have enough of the cream yarn, so I divided my ball in half. I didn't have as much as Andrea recommended, but I went with it. And this sock is finished. It's my size. I tried it on the other night. It totally fits. It's a little snug. I think I will be blocking these socks out on my sock blockers. But they're really cozy, and I think they'll be very hard wearing. Thanks, younger daughter, for doing some test driving of the Mondim yarn. I kind of like that this pair is relatively low contrast, although I can see myself knitting another pair of these for somebody in the future using a much more high contrasty kind of a yarn. I think it's really nice if the contrast color either gradiates or stripes, and I think these are some really cute socks. These are totally for me, completely selfish knitting, and I have until Monday at 10 a.m. to finish the second sock. Now, I have a very, very modest start. Oh my goodness, a very modest start to sock number 2. Well, it'll grow. Fortunately for me, my older daughter dances. I think I've talked about that before. She takes a number of dance classes, and at the school where she dances, there's always 2 weeks a year where parents are invited into the classroom to watch the full class. Well, be darned if I don't bring my knitting and get a lot of knitting done. I am not the only mom. I have convinced other moms to do the same. So there's probably 2 or 3 of us who sit and watch our daughters dance. I say daughters only because in this class it is all girls. And we knit. And I have to say, on Wednesday night when my daughter had a 2.5-hour class, it's a lot of sitting, and I didn't knit the whole time, but I did get probably I had the toe knit, so I knit from probably where the color work started to very close to the heel. An efficient use of time. I'm very proud of myself. So lucky for me, she has a couple classes tonight and a couple classes tomorrow that I will be watching in, and I'm really hoping that I can get these socks done in with tons of time to spare, and then I will be back at my dad's socks from the sock machine. So it's been a very sock heavy couple of weeks, I guess. It's been all accessories all the time, but I have to say I feel very productive. I think because I'm making such small projects, and it really doesn't take very much time to knit a plain pair of socks or a plain pair of mittens. So I'm feeling really productive, and that's a really good feeling to have. So I'll let you know how the challenge goes, but I'm fairly confident that I can finish these socks in the next couple days. And that's all I have on my needles right now. I did want to tell you a little bit about my test knitting. I can't actually tell you about the thing that I test knit, unfortunately, but I can tell you a little bit about the process of test knitting. There are pattern designers who have their own set of test knitters who they call on all the time to take a pattern that they've written and knit it for themselves. The reason that a designer might do this is to ask knitters to sort of iron out the kinks in a pattern, to ask for comments if the pattern makes sense, if the numbers work. It's really helpful if you get test knitters who knit different sizes in the pattern, so that every pattern with all the numbers has had a dry run or two to make sure that it makes sense and the numbers work out, so that when the pattern is released, it is more likely to be accurate. So as I said, sometimes designers have their own set of test knitters who just test knit for them a lot. Some designers will put out a call on, let's say, Instagram or maybe Ravelry or different places to ask knitters to knit their pattern, if they're available to knit a pattern. And I've seen it more and more lately, people calling for test knitters. I have test knit sweaters and scarves and other accessories. It's a fun experience. It's nice to be able to get into a pattern before it's released, so that's fun. It's also, oftentimes designers will offer you a free pattern of your choosing as sort of thanks for your time and your effort, so that's really nice. And then you get this pattern for free for the project that you're test knitting. I have, as I said, I've test knit a number of different things. The most recent project was a fun little test knit. I didn't have a lot of time, but it wasn't a very large project. And now that is a gift that is in my gift basket. And I'll show you, as I said, when I can. That's, I guess, the other thing about test knitting is that the thing that you're test knitting is often to be kept under wraps until the pattern is released. And this pattern release, I believe, is going to happen in early December. And then you can post all the pictures you want, and for the pattern designer and perhaps for the yarn merchant as well, it's sort of free publicity for a pattern that they've put out. So it's sort of win-win for both parties, I think. You get a free pattern, you get to try it out, then you get another free pattern of your choosing. And the designer gets some free input from knitters about their pattern and what works and what doesn't work. And then also some advertisement when the pattern's released. So that's been my experience with test knitting. It's been quite enjoyable. I would encourage you to give it a try. I have sent emails about test knitting where I have been asked to do it, and I have had emails, I send in an email for test knitting and I have not been chosen. And sometimes I think that's because designers just have lots of knitters who maybe are knitting one size, or just a lot of knitters, or maybe all the spots have been used up. But it's a fun experience and I encourage you to give it a try, especially if you feel confident in your skills. And that is all I have to say about test knitting. I do have some December knitting plans. Once I finish up these socks for my dad, most of the gift knitting I have on my plate will be completed. I do have a couple more projects. One that I'm working on that it's just, I'll show you when it's done. And by the time I show you, it'll probably will have been gifted. So something else, a little secret in the background. And then I have a sweater that I may or may not be knitting for my husband for Christmas. Oh, I am nothing if not I was gonna say overachiever. I'm not sure I'm an overachiever. An overplanner. Maybe I just have an elevated idea of how much knitting I can get done. So in December, I have a couple of things. I have a couple of Advent socks that I'll be knitting on every day, and that will just mean knitting a couple stripes of a sock. So that's sort of low-key knitting. I have this other secret project that I'm working on a little bit every day. I'm trying to take that approach. If I do a little bit every day, it will get done and I won't be stressed. And then I have my husband's sweater. This is the pattern that I'm planning to make him. It's the Hide and Peek. Is that right? Title of the pattern here. It's a sweater. It was designed by Maxim Cyr. He's amazing. He and his husband are, not husband, fiance, are amazing hand dyers and designers out of Montreal. And I love their aesthetic. They have some really great, beautiful patterns and yarns. I am using the yarn that the pattern calls for. It's called Recollect. It's a sport weight yarn dyed by Farmer's Daughter Fibers. She is a beautiful dyer out of Montana, I believe. I will include her information here. She's an Indigenous crafter who is passionate about her community and is giving back in so many ways to the Indigenous women where she lives, but also supporting Indigenous crafts and other Indigenous makers. But her yarn is just beautiful. And this Recollect is Rambouillet, which I love. Okay, if you've never knit with Rambouillet, I encourage you to try. It's kind of like the French merino. It's really, really amazing yarn. So I'll be knitting this colorwork sweater for my husband, and hopefully I can finish it by Christmas. I have a backup plan. If I don't finish this sweater by Christmas, it will be for his birthday, which is January 10th, and I'm very confident that I can finish this sweater by then. I'm going to do what I can do to get it done by Christmas, but if it's not done, it's not done, and that's okay. Like I said, I have a backup plan, and he always needs birthday presents too. So fingers crossed, I can make a really big dent in it in December, or as soon as these other gifts are done. But if not, I won't stress myself out too much because his birthday's coming too. That is all my crafting for right now. I have plans to do some baking this weekend. I have plans to watch my kid dance and work on a sock. I also have plans to watch my other kid play some soccer this weekend. She's on a roll. She's had a goal. She scored a goal in each of her last 3 soccer games. So that's super cool and exciting. I'm very happy for her. And that's my plans for this weekend. How are you? What are you getting up to? Are you all wound up like I am about getting smaller gifts, smaller projects off your needles? It's been very satisfying to finish all of these small projects and just watch my gift pile grow. It's a really great thing. I've also been trying to get myself up early in the morning to do some exercise. I have kind of let that slide for the last few months. But I'm really, I really feel like I have more energy when I get up early and start my day with some exercise. So I'm trying to keep that up as much as I can. I can't do it every day because of life, but when I can, I'm finding it very helpful for starting my day off on sort of a more energetic note. I find that once I'm done exercising, I'm more awake and I've got more energy, but also I'm in a more positive mindset. So I don't know if that's something you want to try or if it's something that you do. Let me know what you like to do to wake yourself up and to get yourself going in the morning. But I'm happy to find that when I do get up and get moving, I'm just in a better place. So maybe you want to give that a try. I hope in the next couple weeks that you get some small projects off your needles. I hope that you try knitting a pair of mittens or something else out of some beautiful soft yarns held together. I'm really happy with how these turned out. I hope you maybe bake yourself something really nice to eat. I hope that you find time to spend with the loved ones in your life. I know I plan on getting a jump on that sweater and knitting a lot. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you soon. Bye.